You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Hey, this is Nico Monfort, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
Yo, this is Terrence Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the Snob OS Show. First off, before we get into the actual show, we definitely want to take a quick minute to thank each of you for your continued support, your downloads, your listens, and also a special shout out to our Patreon supporters, who we lovingly call our snobbists. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, you can head on over to patreon.com/snobwestcast, and there you can find out how to become a Patreon supporter, and there you'll also get access to watch our show live as we record and to get exclusive content. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start off with the Lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. First up is a little bit of a oh no from Apple. It has recently come to light that a number of large tech companies, Apple included, of course, they lead off with Apple because Apple is probably one of the biggest names. And what has been found out is that Apple has, along with these other folks, have trained their AI models with YouTube videos without the consent of these creators. So basically what they're doing is using the subtitles. So basically when you turn on subtitles on your content, that's being downloaded by a third party, and it happened for about more than 170,000 videos. And these videos came from content creators, including tech reviewer Marcus Brownlee, better known as MKBHD, Mr. Beast. I think he's like a philanthropist type guy. PewDiePie, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, and Jimmy Kimmel. So basically, the subtitles are separate files that has all of the text and transcripts of the videos. So this was reported by Wired, and the investigation was done by Proof News. And they found out that these companies were harvesting this data and training their AI on it. The investigation from Proof News said that their investigation found that subtitles for 173,536, to be exact, YouTube videos, and it siphoned more than 48,000 channels. And these were used by big tech companies such as Anthropic, NVIDIA, Apple, and Salesforce. Initially, which is what I found kind of interesting, the downloads were initially performed by a nonprofit called, I'm going to say this is kind of like Sleuther, is like Eleuther AI, which says that its goal is to help developers train AI models. So basically, this is kind of like a teaching tool. This is what the original intent was to be a teaching tool to help small developers and academics, train models, learn how to train models and use different data sets to do this type of machine learning type of work. Well, it hasn't gone over too well, as you can imagine, that these large companies who make billions of dollars or worth trillions of dollars are basically using, in some instances, copyrighted content to train their models on. At this point, Wired said that Apple hasn't responded. It doesn't indicate whether any of the other companies have responded to this, but Marcus Brownlee did. And he essentially said that, he uses paid for software that transcribes his videos more accurately, so it gets a more accurate representation of his videos. And that basically this is, copyrighted work that these companies are using and aren't paying any of these content creators for. This is definitely not a good look. What do you think?
So this is where, and I just had this thought pop in my head, so I'm gonna have to talk it out, right?
Okay.
I know that, let's take The Daily Show, for example, with Jon Stewart
Okay.
on Comedy Central. I'm a faithful watcher, right? I know that in order for them to find their content and in order to use like the clips, they bring clips up and they talk about the clips. I know that before streaming, before screen capture and screen recording, DVR, right? You could DVR a bunch of shows or whatever the case may be. You can also use closed captions. So I know that The Daily Show would use closed captions and DVR and do a search on topics. Like if they're talking about national conventions, right? The RNC is having their national convention. I think the DNC has it a week after, whenever it is, right? Instead of them going to and remembering and trying to record each clip themselves for them to take back to the show and turn it into content, they would DVR all the events and they would use closed captions and do a search on word search. So if somebody in their speech mentioned national convention or whatever the case may be, they could then take that, find that clip, do whatever they do, bring it up on the show, right? Well, that content, it ain't really scraping in the sense that training AI and yada, 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 but they are essentially taking clips that was created by somebody else, using that content for something else. We sometimes do it on this show. We'll find a clip or something and we'll put a screen or whatever the case may be, right? But since we are not, I don't know. All I'm trying to get to is I'm not really sure. I know there is a difference, but I'm not really sure what the difference is between a regular person scraping the internet to find content to then use for something else, for personal gain, for whatever the metrics, whatever the case may be. How is that different than companies like Apple, companies like OpenAI, all the companies that they mentioned, scraping YouTube videos and using subtitles to quote unquote train their AI? I know that the main difference is YouTube is user generated content that users are trying to put out there for the sole purpose of making money. And these companies are taking that information, taking those videos without the original user's consent and using that to train their products, their whatever, to make money, right? So it's like I'm a creator on YouTube, I upload a video, Apple takes it, scrapes it, uses it to train their AI. I want Apple, as big as a company as Apple is, as big as a company as NVIDIA is, as big as some of these OpenAI, I want them to be like, yo, if you're using my content to train your AI so you can make even more money, you got to cut me a check, right? That's the general consent. You're using it without my consent and you're using it for profit, right? Those are the two differences, right? But my question is bigger than that. What's the difference between NVIDIA and Apple and all these other companies, OpenAI, and just us content creators using content from other sources to create our content that we directly or indirectly benefit from, right? Is it a difference because we're the little guy and it's Apple, so there's a quit punching down? Or should, what my getting into is the whole media landscape needs to adjust to new technology and new ways we're using content in new ways. And I don't think we're ready to have that conversation. So we kind of point at the big companies for doing this when the whole thing, in my opinion, needs to be adjusted for big and small, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I honestly think it's the money. I really think it's the money. And I think probably the secondary tier to that is not knowing what their content is going to be used for. Like
Right.
what,
Right.
in what capacity is Apple, Nvidia, Salesforce, any of these companies, Anthropic, what are they training on my content? What is that going to be used for? Now they say it's just text, which, that's what they say it is. So that's what we, believe. But I mean, if you take it a little bit further and say, what if it is voice? What if it is video? What are they doing with this?
What is
And
the
how are they
style?
storing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, what could this potentially be used for down the road?
And you're
Could
a
I
big
be
company. Why can't you
defamed?
pay for it? Why can't you contact me and say,
Yeah.
yo, we liked your content. We like the way it's structured. We like the style. We need to use this part or the whole video in its entirety to train our AI.
Yeah.
And in exchange for that, we'll give you whatever, take it or leave
Yeah.
it. And then let me counter
Yeah.
with a negotiation, or just say, this is what it is, take it or leave it. And if I say no, then you move on. You're a huge company, trillions of dollars. Why are
You
you
have
still
lots of lawyers too.
right?
Yeah.
Why are you on the cheap doing the same thing that I would do to get content? You're doing the same thing that I'm doing, screen grabbing and screen recording. Why is Apple doing that? Can't you pay
Yeah.
people to do
And
that? Can't you create your own material that your AI can scrape off of? Why are you using my stuff?
And it's not like they, in Marcus Brownlee's case, it's not like they don't already have a relationship with him. They invite him to Apple Park for all this stuff. So they know him, they know his work, and they've partnered with him before. So, I really think that's, it's the money. And what is this going to be used for down the line? What types of implementations are you going to be using this for, especially without my consent or my I think, to me, that would be the biggest thing. Why are you doing this without my consent, without my knowledge? You have tons and tons of lawyers whose job is just to make sure you don't, screw anything up. And that's exactly what you're doing. And to find out that this all is sourced from a nonprofit that is basically trying to help the developer community to learn, to go and do this work, hopefully ethically, and then you're taking it and using it unethically. It's all kind of
Ethically or
like
not,
us,
right? So I think that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Ethically or not, you're taking my content without my consent,
Yeah.
whether you're using it for ethical
Yeah.
reasons or not. Let a
Yeah.
brother know and let me decide,
Yeah.
let me approve,
drop me some checks.
or let me approve and say, yeah, you can go ahead and use it for
Yeah.
free because you're using it because I believe in this cause or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing you add, Apple works so hard to protect their own IP. Shame on them for then
Their
turning
own
around
data.
and jacking somebody else's IP,
Yeah.
especially when they work so
It's
hard.
wild. And it's wild how, this even came to be. Like I said, it came from a nonprofit. So this is where it kind of all started. So it's just shame on them. I mean, that's really all you can say, because it's foul. It's no way to kind of make it right or make it, but we were doing this, or we were doing that. There's no.
So coming from to play conversely, Apple could say, NVIDIA, all these companies could say, well, you put it on the public web. What do you expect? Somebody, it's interesting. It's useful. We can use it. You put it, made it public. So same thing with Facebook. No, was it Facebook? No, Microsoft. Microsoft 2 weeks ago was at a convention or at one of the head AI guy was speaking at an event or being interviewed or was on a panel. I can't remember what it was, but he was saying pretty much the internet is nothing but freeware. And what I mean by that is if you put it on the internet, anybody can use it for anything unless you unless you are
forever.
And it's there forever. So it makes sense
Yeah.
for companies to say, hey, we need this data. Where are we going to get all this data in order to train these whatevers, right? Where can we get all this data? Where can we make well, the internet already has decades worth of data.
Nowhere else. Yeah.
And there's no greater suppository or is it repository? It's repository.
Repository.
Suppository is something else.
Yes.
There is no greater repository of information that reflects whatever was going on in history greater than the internet. What that is so enticing for big companies to get to try to get that information. So why wouldn't we use it? Because it is public domain, right? So that's the argument that I would assume that they would try to make. Again, the problem with that is Apple works so hard to protect their own IP from people jacking it. So it's like, come on, man.
Doing this exact same thing.
Right. How you going to turn around and take somebody else's data and be like, oh, man. Like, let somebody try to replicate or learn how to make a smartphone off of the iPhone guts. Y'all be suing them so hard.
Burning the house down.
So surprise.
Screaming bloody murder.
So I hope they're not surprised that content creators are pushing back and be like, nah, man, cut us some checks or let us know and let me get
some checks.
Right. Let me give the authority to do that. Just don't take it and be like, deal with it.
Right. Speaking of Apple cutting checks, the App Store consumer class action finally has a jury trial date. It's set for February 2026. If you don't remember, there's a class action suit based in California's federal courts that accused Apple of monopolizing the app market for iPhones. So basically, we've talked about this before, apps go in the App Store, Apple's getting 30% off top. And it's, talked about the way it has affected consumers, the loss of money that customers have spent purchasing apps in the App Store. I think this applies to apps that cost $10 or more. So the U.S. District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers has set the date for the trial. As I mentioned, is February 2026. And this is for, like I said, customers who spent $10 or more on Apple app or in-app purchases since 2008. This lawsuit was originally filed in 2011. This goes to show that some people are willing to play the long game. By the time this actually goes to trial, it will be, 15 years since the original filing of the lawsuit. So, I think it goes to say the plaintiffs are basically saying that the total damages should be in the range of 7 to 10 billion US dollars. There was an appeal back in May for Apple to basically kind of toss this out, and they were like, nah, we're going to go through with it. Appeal denied. And so this has finally got a date, and I think the interesting part is it's going to be heard by a jury. It's not going to be something that a judge is going to decide. It's going to be 12 members of the public who make this determination on whether the App Store is whether Apple has monopolized the App Store community. So I thought it was interesting, on the heels of all the other, they had that lawsuit with Epic. They have, I think, a couple of lawsuits going on with the EU. And I'm sure there's probably hundreds of other, lesser known, smaller legal claims or lawsuits that Apple is going through as well. But I just want to get your thoughts on the fact that this, it is actually going forward.
So it may be a benefit to Apple that it is being decided by jurors versus a judge, because Apple can sway consumer sentiment, because the way Apple, I'm assuming, wants consumers, and then by extension, these jurors, to see is that, we created the App Store. We created the App Store for our phones to be used by our users. how can we monopolize something that we created? Of course, we're going to
For
monopolize
us.
it because we created it. It's like, how are you going to tell somebody, they went through the process of cooking this dinner for themselves and they sit down to eat their dinner. And then here comes some stranger in the house. It's like, give me some of that. And then it's like, you got to give me some of that because you're monopolizing your food. It's like, yeah, I monopolize my food because I made it and I'm going to eat it,
I bought it. I made it in my
Right.
house.
So I can see Apple saying good because a judge may be a little bit more, not stricter, but more um, uh, black and white, versus the jurors maybe have a little more gray
You can
area.
play on those emotions.
Right, right. Um,
Yeah.
Another thing I was going to mention is that the lawsuit, and I'm just going to read this part. The lawsuit filed in 2011 accuses Apple of artificially, that's artificially inflating the 30% sales commission charged to developers on the company's App Store, claiming that the overcharges are passed down to consumers through increased prices for apps. So that's where the class action lawsuit is saying this is hurting consumers because consumers are paying more for apps because Apple is artificially inflating that 30% commission fee. So
So in turn, the developers would have to charge more for the apps.
so that's what they're claiming the developers are doing. What's going to be
Okay.
hard to prove is that they're actually doing that, right? Because they are
Yeah.
accusing Apple, according to the story, it's accusing Apple of artificially inflating the commission. But how are they artificially inflating it when that is
When they set their own price
and they
because
set
it's
the
their
terms?
thing.
In the terms, it
Yeah.
says Apple charges this much. And then even then,
Yeah.
Apple has a scale. I don't know what the exact one is, but every app developer that submits
Isn't being
app
charged 30%.
isn't being charged 30%, right? And even the ones that qualify, like you said, apps over $10 or whatever that number was, I guarantee you, even those aren't being flat feed 30%, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the relationship, depends on who you are, depends on what the app is. I'm pretty sure there's a whole list of things that Apple looks at before they
Of
just
either
blanket.
ors, if this, then that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then for it to be artificially, it ain't artificial. That's what it is. That's the terms. So for them to say artificial,
And if the developer signed on for it, they knew that it wasn't like it's surprise 30%.
right.
They
So,
knew it when they signed the user agreement.
right.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're saying artificially, and they're claiming that our overcharges are passed down to consumers, it's going to be hard to prove.
How do you prove that?
Right. How is there and maybe you can, but that's a tough thing to automatically, that's like inflation. How are you going to sue somebody for inflation? If it costs more to make it costs more on the materials, it costs more for the production, costs more for the marketing, advertising. So automatically, naturally, it's going to cost more to purchase it, right? So Apple, even if that is the case, and developers is like, man, 30% is a lot of money. What if we charged all of our customers 1 cent? Will that cover the cost of, whatever? What developer wouldn't do that? But that is not something nefarious. That's not something that falls out of line with what other companies, anybody does, right? Which sucks because the consumers end up eating that. But that's no different than price of meat. That's no different than the price of automobiles. That's no different than a credit card charge. A lot of a lot of businesses, like for instance, for a perfect example, right? We talked about it in the pre-show. I had a bunch of work done in my house. Me and my wife we try to use our credit cards whenever possible to get the points. So this big work that we're getting done in the house, I asked the dude, I'm like, yo, can I pay with a credit card? Because it's a big enough cost to where I'll get a nice little piece of points if I pay on a credit card. He's like, yeah, you can pay on a credit card, but I got to charge you the processing fee, which is like 3% or something like that. And I was like, nah, I'm not paying.
I'm good.
Extra.
I don't need the points that bad.
Right. I do not need the point. But that is an example of a fee that a business is happening to a business and they are passing it on to the consumers. Can I go sue my contractor now because they artificially increasing prices because of this fee that is being levied on them. It's like, no, it's the cost
Right.
of doing business. So how can you sue somebody on the cost of doing business, which sounds like what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds like they're trying to get some money. Trying to get some money. But if they were, I mean, they went after the right company. Why?
Sure.
Because Apple, again, has been named the most valuable company in the world with a net worth of $3.62 trillion.
Go after the big fish, baby.
And yep, and they saw the Apple stock jumped 2.5% in just one day after Morgan Stanley pointed out the AI work that Apple is doing, and that was like, boop. Let's get that jumping, the stock price jumping 2.5%. That's a pretty big leap. That's definitely a noticeable difference. And it's one of those things where Apple has kind of held this title for a while, and it seems like it's still going. They're still, consistently.
Well, they're back and forth with Microsoft. Microsoft at one time caught them and surpassed them for a short minute, and then Apple jumps back up. Now everybody's looking at NVIDIA for being another competitor to catch them in the near future. But like you said, for the most part, over the course of 10, maybe 20 years, Apple's consistently been one of the, if not the most valuable company. So going back to our other story, it makes sense for people to be like, yeah, let's try to get the big fish because they out here making money.
Let's try to get some of this money because they got it in spades. So I just thought that was interesting to note on the heels of some of the issues, especially as it relates to the first story we talked about, where they are using content and without people's permission.
Y'all got $3 trillion
and then
pay them people.
Drop them a couple dollars and you won't even see the difference. And then with this lawsuit that's been going on since 2011, it's like, look, we are not going to stop until we get us a piece of this $3.62 trillion. All right, that is going to wrap up the lowdown. We're going to head on over to Second String, where we talk all other tech. So yeah, we talked, I think, a little bit last week. I can't remember if it was on the pre-show or the regular show about Ticketmaster being breached. Well, we thought that was something. Right. But AT&T said, hold my beer. And nearly all of AT&T's, I think what they have, 170 million customers or somewhere around that, their call records were stolen, not technically from or by AT&T, but through the cloud platform Snowflake that they use. And Snowflake has been in the news as well for some other issues. But essentially, call and text records of nearly all of its cellular subscribers were included in the link. In addition to, say if I have AT&T and Terrence has T-Mobile, the message or call that I sent to Terrence has now Terrence in the mix. So it's not just AT&T customers. It's the people
that
who
AT&T
you text
customers
with, you call with. Right. So it's actually a larger number than just those of AT&T subscribers. And the other thing that I found very interesting, let me backtrack. How we mentioned Ticketmaster. The Ticketmaster hack, it was also an issue with Snowflake as well. So two big hacks that have been reported in the last, couple of weeks. were involved with this cloud platform. So I think something is going to come of that. But all that to say is the interesting thing about the Apple breach is this happened back in 2022. So basically, I didn't realize this, but landlines as well. So if I'm on my cell phone and I call my grandma on her landline, that number is impacted as well. But this happened between May 1st, 2022 through October 31st, 2022. And it says also in this article from Ars Technica, that the compromised data also included records from January 2nd of 2023 for a very small number of people, but for about April, May, June, July, August, September. So for about 7 months in 2022, over half the year, these customers were basically their call records, their text records are all now just hanging out on the dark web, and it's currently 2024. So almost a full 2 years after the breach happened, we're just now finding out about it.
So a couple things. Number one, I'm glad that I wasn't an AT&T customer. I just became an AT&T customer for broadband service, but that was 2 or 3 months ago. So I'm pretty sure my data was not got in this leak. Another thing I wanted to note is that at the bottom of this story, it says an AT&T spokesperson told Ars Technica that Snowflake breach is unrelated to another recent leak involving the data of 73 million current and former subscribers. So this is on the heels of another unrelated leak through the AT&T. The third thing I wanted to note is it doesn't look like actual text messages were taken. It looks like call logs. So for phone calls, it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, that they stole the time duration of the calls and the number of calls. So
the numbers.
Right. So if me and Nika called back and forth, it don't necessarily recorded what we talked about, but it showed how many times I called her and it showed how long we talked on the phone. Right. That's one thing. With the text messages, it only shows text counts. Like if me and Nika text back and forth, it only shows that me and her text back and forth in the course of a week.
5 times.
Five times. Right. It doesn't look like, I could be wrong. And I just kind of skimmed through the article, but it looks like they didn't get actual conversations. So it didn't record, what me and Nika's conversation, and it didn't grab any text from our text messages. And if that would have been a big problem, because I do it. And I know a lot of people
already bad, but
well, just in the type of conversations we have, right? Because all the time, my wife is asking me for a password to this. And I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I'll just put it in the text message real quick. The password. I'm pretty sure people put at throughout the course of a conversation.
Their bank account numbers, like, hey,
addresses,
can you send me XYZ?
birth certificates, all that stuff. So
Mom, what's my social security number?
Exactly.
Or what day, what time was I born? All the things that people could use to steal your identity.
Right. All of that is sitting there in text messages. So again, it says, while the data does not include customer names, there are often ways using publicly available online tools to find the name associated with a specific phone number, right?
So to piece the things together,
right?
Cobble them together,
right? So the information and data stolen, the people who stole it will have to do some work to glean some useful information. But they already mentioned that one person has been apprehended. The FBI has apprehended one person already.
Oh, wow.
And there's still, it says in April, AT&T learned that customer data was legally downloaded from our workspace on a third-party cloud platform. AT&T said it's working with law enforcement and understands that at least one person has been apprehended. But reading that brings up another comment that the data was illegally downloaded from our workspace on a third-party cloud platform. They don't say which
which was
third party.
Snowflake.
Was it Snowflake? I thought Snowflake was the group that actually stole the data.
No,
Oh,
Snowflake is the platform.
Okay. So yeah,
Yeah, Snowflake is a platform.
that was the other thing I was going to bring
And they
up.
were involved with the Ticketmaster breach because
Okay.
everybody has everything in the cloud. Snowflake is one of the largest cloud platforms out there. A lot of people use AWS,
Right.
but Snowflake is a big one as well.
Yeah. So people, anybody else that is using Snowflake for anything, they are probably renegotiating or finding
Trying to
another
get out.
provider. Right. So that's going to
Yeah.
cause all kind of problems for Snowflake going
Or
forward.
they're, even if they can't get off of it really quickly, they're probably running a couple things in parallel. They're probably they probably have one team trying to figure out how to get us off of this, and another team like, what can we do to beef up our security so that in case they do get hacked again, we won't have our customers' data out there flying around on the dark web, because this is where all of this information goes to live, and just waiting for, the right person to, pass the right amount of dollars to kind of pick it up and take it wherever they're trying to take it.
Right.
To me, it all goes to show that we don't have the infrastructure federally mandated to cover all of these things, because there's no way that if I was an AT&T customer, for you to be like, hey, you need to pay your bill, or hey, we're going to suspend your service if you don't pay your bill on time. What do you mean you're going to suspend my service? What do you mean? You got all my business out here on the streets and
Right.
you want to come to me?
You want me
it's
to-
one of those things where, but
It'll say, you want me to pay you to have my data leaked on the dark web. Is that what I'm paying you
Right.
for? Is that what's included in my
Right.
in my cell phone bill? Is there small print somewhere that
Right.
says, we're going to leak your data, either on purpose or by accident? Your data will be leaked. So ignore that. And so the point I was
and
getting
it should be.
I'll say the point I was going to make is,
No, go ahead.
you can't do nothing about this, right? I don't own a cell phone tower. I don't know how to go to the communications FCC and get a phone number and then put an antenna on my roof. So only I can use my cell phone number, right? I have to trust AT&T, T-Mobile, whomever with my cell
Verizon,
phone,
whoever.
with my phone number and my services that I pay them for. I can't generate them services on my own, right? I have to trust that these companies are going to do right by my data. And when they don't, there's no recourse. I can't go, all right, give me my phone number. I'm going to put an antenna on my roof. Give me I'm going to figure out my own way to get internet. Let me figure out how to send text like email. Like, you could possibly stand up a server in your house and all your emails are stored on that thing, but you still have to depend on internet service providers to transmit that data. So it's like, all that to say, it's helpless. It's like companies, the only way you can't tell users, like, I can't go into the hookup and say, all right, AT&T had this breach, so the best way you do it, I can't even do that because there's no way to do it, right? So it's going to take the government to clamp down on these companies and be like, yo, we are going to start penalizing you millions of dollars if you are not doing a better job of securing your consumers' data, right? Or like you said, y'all need to be giving me discounts. If my data was leaked.
And that's what I'm saying. My thing is, there should, in addition to, fines and all those things, there should be a direct, what's the word I'm looking for? A direct compensation to me as a user. In the other thing that they had, where the first one with the 73 million people were involved, those people should have a direct compensation back for that. And I mean, not just a one-time thing.
The $20, right.
Right. You put me on the data hack program where my bill, I only pay $20 a month. And that's me.
Yep.
That's me. That's what I got.
Yep.
Or, it should be something tangible, because now you have people having to, get credit freezes, get credit monitoring, and that's all they keep offering. I was like, the last time I was in a breach and then the ticket match, when I was like, I don't have to go and do another credit monitoring or another credit freeze or whatever, because I got one from the last thing
Right.
that my data was spilled on the dark web for. So, just offering credit tip monitoring and all those things, that's the bare minimum. And honestly, at this point, we all have data on the dark web, but there needs to be some sort of comeuppance for these companies who aren't doing the right thing. They're cutting costs. They're being cheap. They are
hiring a bunch of contractors from overseas.
Yeah. So it should be some direct compensation back to the consumer that says, hey, put me on the I've been hacked plan, because I have, and waiting 3 to 4 years for you to send me a $5 refund, for a class action lawsuit. That's not going to do jack to me.
Yep.
That's not going to help me, because most of that money is going to lawyers anyway. So I'm screwed again.
Especially if the cost of the service that I'm paying you goes up every year. It's like, come on, man.
Or you add new fees.
Right.
Or, because, it's really, as consumers, we're really screwed.
It's so easy for them to get our money, but it's so hard for us to get our money back.
Exactly. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for Second String. We're going to head on over to For the Culture, where we talk about things in social media, entertainment, politics, culturally relevant things that we find interesting. And I didn't want to really talk about the RNC or the attempted assassination, because it's everywhere and nobody knows what's real, what's false. But what I did want to talk about is the concept that there is a singular voice that speaks for Black people, that represents all Black people. We've said it before, I'll say it again. Black people are not a monolith. And one of the things that we're in election season, elections a few months away, trying to get votes, trying to say we are better than this party, that party is worse, we're better for this type of person, we're better for that type of person. But I'm a Black person, so those things, related to Black people affect me, and we've got to talk about it. So there has been this concerted effort for the Conservative Party to outreach to Black people. They started really trying to reach out to get engagement, and particularly for Black men. They are catering to Black men because I think 96% of Black women vote for along the Democratic ticket. And I think they see some wiggle room in the Black male space. You'll see they've gone after some of these rappers who I think it was apparently they're really popular in New York for drill that they had with doing some type of event, or they'll have, their smattering of Black Republican, politicians, trying to cater to that as well. The latest person who has been brought into this is Amber Rose. If you don't know Amber Rose, she's most famous for dating Kanye West and having a child with Wiz Khalifa, both very known, both very popular Black male rappers. She's a self-proclaimed feminist.
And she does some activism. She does.
She did, yeah. She calls it slut walk, where they're kind of trying to take back that term. And now she's been given, as of late, she's been photographed with the former president. She's been tweeting, posting about how great he is. And I think the last thing she was like, he's a real alpha man, and she feels so protected, by
She's
him and all
this?
those types of things. Yes.
Oh, wow. Does she know him like that?
Yeah. I think she's being paid to say these things, but that's just me. I don't know. It just, to go from some of her previous commentary calling him a sexual predator, he's against women, to now all of a sudden wearing the red hat. Huh? Yeah. Yep. They got the receipts. So on social media, they was like, is this she was a prime issue candidate after she, was found to support him. And most recently, she had a primetime speaking slot at the RNC convention, talking about how, people would, how he is the best for Black people and all those things. But she herself has said that she is not Black. I believe her ethnicity, I think her mother is white. I think with, she's white, but she, how some white people like, I'm Irish, or I'm, Scottish, or whatever. But basically her mother is white, of, other European descent. And her father, I believe, is Cape Verdean. I know someone who's Cape Verdean and he considers himself Black, but she's said that she does not consider herself Black. So it's one of those things where,
according to the internet, and then believe it what you want, she says, my dad is half Irish, half Italian, which is a something that she mentions in an article I found on Complex. Again, this is internet stuff, so believe it what you take it with a grain of salt. But she does mention that she says, and then also my Cape Verdean side, which I don't know that much about. I try to get up on that culture also, but I embrace everything that I am. I don't feel like I'm more one thing than the other. Right. So that is her statement on her ethnicity.
Right. And she says Cape Verdean. She doesn't intimate that Cape Verdean is Black or of color. She just says Cape Verdean.
Right.
But I say all this to say is she's known because she's immersed herself in Black culture.
Sure.
Around Black people, dated Black people, appeared as if she is a person of color. And I think I saw it on social media. I didn't really dig too deep into it, but apparently they released a rap video at the RNC that she was in, and she had a gold chain with Donald Trump's face on it, I believe. I saw it and I kept scrolling because I was like, I don't need that to eat my brain. But I say all this to say is we have people perpetuating the fact that they know what Black people want, what Black people need, who's blessed for Black people. And they do it in such a narrow scope. And usually that narrow scope is not the best side of things. We've seen where they were talking about, oh, well, this guy being, shot at, endear him to Black people, almost as to say that everything, or when he was convicted, that endears him to Black people, almost to say that the only thing that Black people have going for themselves besides Black jobs, which we still don't know what Black jobs are, is violence. And I think they're using her as a way to try to pull in Black men, because she would be someone that Black men may consider desirable because she has dated other Black men before. And it's just one of those things where it's just the consistency of people coming into our culture, wanting the good parts of our culture, but not wanting any of the hardship that's in our culture, coming in, taking what they want, and then going back to, well, technically I'm not Black, I'm half this, a part this, quarter that, whatever, but don't call me that. But just 5 minutes ago, you were in the culture. So just your thoughts. You are a Black man. And how you see that she, along with other, you know, black folks, mostly black men, there are a couple of black women who are in the secret sauce, but it's mostly, you know, black men. And now they're using what I perceive to be a person that was in black culture now being used, to me, against black culture.
Well, so, and getting my thoughts together.
Okay.
I feel like we should, and I don't even want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. I
It's
feel like
hard, right?
I feel like we shouldn't gatekeep our culture. And what I mean by that
Okay.
is if somebody feels like they identify with the way we walk, the way we talk, you know, how we move, you know,
How we dress.
how we dress,
Yeah.
cultural references, entertainment, whatever the case may be. I don't feel like it's beneficial to us to be like, hey, you have to have that one drop, right? You got to have that one drop of black, you know, black to be considered black, right? If you love the music, if you love the culture, I'm okay with you loving the music and loving the culture and the entertainment or whatever the case may be, the lingo, whatever. I'm okay with
Right.
that. I don't feel like we should gatekeep, right? I think
Right.
the problem with, or the issue, the challenges with black folks, right, is we are um quick is not the word, but we do
Are very
sometimes.
welcoming.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We are very welcoming because although we shouldn't gatekeep, we also should be, all right, what is your purpose for loving our culture? Are you just showing the culture love? Are you contributing to it? Are you being a good steward of it? Or are you only using it for your beneficial gain? And the second it's not beneficial to you anymore, you turn it off. Now, I'm not saying we should gatekeep, but at the same time, you know, just know that there are some people out there who will try to utilize our culture for their personal gain, and really not identify or love the culture like they claim they do. Right. So we got to recognize
Right.
game, but at the same time, we shouldn't be uh really shouldn't be handing out black cards, right? Right. So that's how I
No
think.
invites to the cookout.
Right.
No.
And we shouldn't be trying to take people's black cards. If you are black and you know, you do something outside, quote unquote, outside of the culture, we shouldn't be trying to take your black card, right? You're black,
Right.
but at the same time, we see you, right? That's how it should be.
We see you.
We see you,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes we don't do that part. We don't, we see, you know, welcome you. And then, you know, when it no longer has become beneficial to them, they turn it off, and then we're hurt. We're personally hurt.
Right.
And somebody like Amber Rose,
Right.
who we associated with our culture, says, actually, technically, I never really said I was part of the culture, so I'm out, right? So I think that's what's happening here.
You just
right?
assumed that. You inferred that because I was
Right.
over here.
Right. Exactly. Right. So that's the first part. The second part is where this all started with the Republicans trying to court black folks, right? I think it started, well, no, it started with Trump because Donald Trump was a rich, wealthy man in America, quote unquote, at the time, self-made. So we thought. Super popular. So you can see, or we can go back in history and see all the references to Donald Trump, specifically in music.
Name dropped in a lot of hip hop. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So that's kind of where they kind of use that idea to say, oh, let's see how we can use the culture to court black voters. Right. Specifically, I think it started with Hillary Clinton because there's still a lot of misogyny. There's still a lot of patriarchy to where people said, I'm not voting for a woman to be president. I don't care how good she is. I don't care how qualified she is. She is a woman, and women should not be president. It just so happens
because they're too emotional.
Right. It just and black men and women said that. It just so happens that the majority of people that was so outright with saying they're not voting for a female president was black men. So the Republicans said, bet. All right, so here's how we're going to, and then it makes matters
We
worse.
see our end.
Right. And then we see our end. Then make matters worse. Hillary Clinton with the whole hot sauce in my bag. It's like, come on now. And then following up, both happened on the Breakfast Club. Joe Biden says, well, if you ain't voting for me, you ain't black. Right. Both like, hey, don't try so hard to court our vote. So the Republicans was like, all right, bet. The Democrats are messing it up. They are not doing a good job of keeping that stronghold of black voters.
Keeping their base.
Right. Yeah. So the Republicans are like, all right, let's see how we can get in here. They bring in people like Candace Owens. They bring in people like Tim Scott. They bring in people like Amber Rose to say,
Van Jones.
Yeah, a number of people to say, yo, there are some people out there that you may identify with, that you may find that are of the culture, that, hey, if we bring them out here and say, hey, check these people out, and then on top of that, Amber Rose is attractive, and she is specifically attractive to black men, because black men, she has the quote unquote look that a lot of black men go for when they are finding themselves who's the most attractive person, right?
Yeah.
So you add all that up, the Republicans are really, this is the angle that they're trying, not to do right by black people.
Nope.
But
we do want your vote.
But to get your vote, right? So again, like I mentioned, it's not personally, but for Amber Rose specifically, it is a slap in the face for her to like be so tied to our culture. And then in these quotes, I'm reading a couple of quotes from her speech at the RNC. She says, I'm no politician and I don't want to be, but I do care about the truth. And the truth is that the media has lied to us about Donald Trump. She said, I know this because a long time I believed those lines. Now that's important because Donald Trump's vice president pick, they announced him. What was his name? JD Vance. JD Vance. He said the same thing. Vance. He said because they ran the tape on him and they were like, back in the day, you was calling Trump all these names and said he's terrible, he's unfit, yada, yada, yada. Now, all of a sudden, you his VP pick. And his response was, well, I got duped by the media and the media lied to me about Donald Trump. So the reason why I say that, and then you turn back around, Amber Rose says the same thing. I do care about the truth, and the truth is the media lied to us about. That is the new game plan to get people in general, specifically black folks, even more specifically black men, to believe that the media is lying to you, because we already believe it. We already go, can't believe what you see on the media, the news, they lying to you. They just care about ratings, yada, yada, yada. So you add all that up. The Republicans is like, all right, bet. This is how we're going to get them. We're going to say that the media is lying to you. You need to open your eyes. They're actually using a stay woke.
Do your own research. That's the statement they love to say. Do your own research.
They're actually saying, yo, the way we use woke, they're actually using wokeness. That they use it all wrong. They say wokeness is all wrong, but we say wokeness as, hey, stay woke. The media is out here lying to you. They are saying, doing the exact same thing, like, yo, stay woke. The media is lying to you about Donald Trump. He's not all these mean things that you claim he is. All that stuff you're getting is from the media, and the media is lying to you, So I think it's smart on the Republican side to use this angle.
They're crafty.
I just think it's sad that people may fall for it.
They're going to fall for it, and then when it's too late, then they're going to, they're going to have all the excuses in the world, but by that time, we're all going to be up Ish Creek without a paddle.
And we need to recognize, because she says, she went on to say in the speech, she says, she's more specific. She doesn't just say media. She says, I believe the left wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. And she's saying, and I realize Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love. And that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me. These are my people. This is where I belong. Facts will tell you that Donald Trump and the Republican Party do care if you
are racist
they do care if you're
and are homophobic.
right, if you're gay or if you're black, because the whole thing is make America great again. We know what that dog whistle means.
White
Right,
nationalism.
right.
Let's take us back to the
They
60s when it
they
was
i-
great.
they
For
identify
who?
they identify, or they at least acknowledge all of these crazy groups that specifically say,
Yeah.
don't like black people, we really don't care about women, shut up, women, and gay people, y'all need to split up
Have these
because
babies.
right, and shut up, right? So the fact that um the Republicans surprisingly are doing a very good job of towing, or of
Really
that
good job.
line between, hey, we're for everybody, but really we ain't.
But we not.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Because JD Vance's wife is finding out she's South Asian.
mhm,
And they didn't know that. They
mhm.
meaning their base, until somebody put a picture, and then they started talking about the kids' names and then where's she from and doing memes about her and all these kind of things. But all they're inclusive, right?
Yep. So it benefits, all that to say, you brought up her race and ethnicity. It's been determined that she's not necessarily black in the sense that she has African American history or lineage in her roots, with the exception of that Cape Verdean aspect of it, right? Which again, she don't know about. So I ain't gonna do your research for you. If you telling me you don't know that much about your
Right.
Cape Verdean background, I'm gonna take you at your word, right? I think it's
Right.
just sad that, again, like you said, she ingratiated
People are gonna
herself
fall for it.
with our
Yeah.
culture, and then when it came for her to benefit, um, when it came for her to be something else to benefit for her, she jumped ship and said,
Yeah.
all the things that she said, which makes sense
Yeah.
for a white person. It's like, that's mean,
Yeah.
and I know that's kind of outs, but technically speaking, if we keeping it 100,
But
she's a white lady.
she's being true to herself.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
it
true to
makes
her culture,
it
unfortunately.
makes in a roundabout way, not, again, I'm not trying to marginalize all white people, because I don't want them to
Right.
marginalize all black folks,
Right.
but as
They
a
are not
white
a monolith either.
right, but as a white woman getting on the RNC stage and saying, hey, the media, the right wing propaganda, the left wing propaganda is lying to you about Donald Trump, I can see why you would say that.
It fits.
Mhm.
It fits, unfortunately. And again, it's really all unfortunate because marginalized and underrepresented people in this country, and it's not just based on race and gender. Underrepresented people or marginalized people include poor people, and poor people are of all races, are of all religions, and of all backgrounds, are going to unfortunately be the ones who are, this is going to be the biggest detriment to them. And they can't see it, and don't want to see it. They want to be a part of the quote unquote cool kids. So they're willing to accept it. And then, like I said before, if it goes the way I don't want it to go, then we're all gonna be screwed,
Well,
except for
we're gonna
a
have to,
very small population of people.
and not to belabor the point any longer, but let's just say Trump is
Yeah.
elected president, and none of these cases stick to him, and he's able to utilize presidential immunity to get out all the stuff to get out of the stuff that has stuck to him. We're just going to have to be on a personal level. We're going to have to start paying more attention to how elections affect us on a daily basis, right? We typically tend to look at the president as, oh, that's the person making all the decisions. It ain't.
Yeah.
Which is probably why the Republicans, they secretly hate Donald Trump's guts. But the fact that they are willing to vote
But they
for
love
him,
what he brings.
right?
Yeah.
Because they know for a fact he ain't running nothing. That 4 years that he was in office, the corporations and the lobbyists and the other
They fed his
groups,
ego, and he did exactly what they wanted him to do.
right. So they're like, sure, as much as he called my wife ugly to my face, I'm going to support Donald Trump because the people who pay me want Donald Trump to be president. So I'm going to forget what he said about my wife. I'm going to side with him
Ted
because that means
Cruz.
more money in that more money in my pocket, more influence in my pocket. So they're okay with Donald Trump being president because the president is not the one making the calls. We need to understand that the president, I don't care if it's Obama, I don't care if it's Biden, the president of the United States does not run the country. The corporations, the lobbyists, the politicians, the judges, the politicians that are writing the laws and giving them to the president, these are the entities that run the country. We need to be cognizant of that and stop waiting until October now, August, July through October to be worried about what's the best direction of our country. Once we start doing that, we'll start weeding out some of these people automatically, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah. Oh gosh, all we got to do is, I don't know what we got to do. We just got to pray and hope for the best because at this point it's pretty wild. We're going to go ahead and leave it there because that is super depressing. And we're going to head on over to the Hookup for our tech tip of the week.
All right. I got a couple of them, right? So personally, right? The first one is, I put this in the title, don't sleep on the Siri Remote. The reason why I say don't sleep on the Siri Remote, because it is tiny, it is easy to lose. But with the Siri Remote, you can use your phone and use the find feature, similar to how you would locate a piece of luggage or a backpack that has an Apple tag in it. Mm-hmm. You can open up your phone, do the Find My app, open up the whatever the title you give into the Apple tag, the AirTag rather, and you can use like location based to actually find the Apple AirTag. You can do the same thing with the Siri Remote, but you don't go through the Find My app. The way you invoke the Find on the Siri Remote is you drop down to the control center. However you get to the control center where you swipe down, or you actually go to the control center from the settings. Once you do that, you can utilize the remote function on your phone, on your iPad, to actually use your phone and iPad as a remote. But also there's a feature to where you can actually find your remote. And once you hit the find remote, it'll actually do like the haptic feedback, to where the closer you get to your remote, your phone will start pulsating. And on the screen, similar to like the Apple AirTag Find My, it'll do the same thing. It'll show you feet distance that you're getting closer. The closer you get, the screen starts to pulsate and your phone starts to vibrate with the haptic feedback to let you know you're getting close. Farther away you get.
Closer.
Right. So I just want to let people know, if you were considering or on the fence about the Siri Remote, for that feature alone, I would definitely pick it up, right? So that's my first hookup. The second hookup is because of what we talked about earlier. I am no longer an Amazon Prime subscriber. And actually, it's been pretty good because I haven't bought stuff that I really don't need and I really don't need right now. So it's forced me to save my money, and it forced me to be strategic about when I buy things, right? The only thing that I'm missing from Amazon Prime is Amazon Prime Video, because like we mentioned before, I'm a fan of The Boys and they have a new season that's currently out. I want to watch it. Before, I thought I had to be an Amazon Prime Video member. I did a quick check and come to find out you can subscribe to Amazon Prime Video only without being an Amazon Prime subscriber. Now, I'm pretty sure that's common knowledge to a lot of people. I didn't know that. So this is more of a hookup to me. And my hookup to me is you can get a standalone subscription with ads from Amazon Prime Video for about $9 a month. I think it's like $12 with ads, I think is what it is. But if you want to get it a part of the Prime membership, it's free. But you got to pay the $139 a year for the Amazon Prime Video. If you ain't doing that, if you're like me, one of the few people on planet Earth
cutting the cord
that doesn't have Amazon Prime Video, if you're like me, but you do want to, if you are one of the people like me that doesn't have Amazon Prime, but still want to take advantage of Amazon Prime Video, you can do that as a separate subscription for $9 a month.
Nice. All right, that is going to wrap up our show for this week. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Sure, you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva all over the internet. with that, we definitely want to say a quick thank you to all of our listeners, to comment, to connect, to share, to support our show. You can head on over to snobblewestcast.com to get all the details. And that's going to wrap it up. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.